In this episode, I refer to a free challenge, a 4-day challenge or event that I am running. At the time of recording, it was the 9th of November 2020, and the challenge is running from the 16th to the 19th of November. There is a registration page for it, and there will be live video information and resources available. So if you're listening to this after the 19th of November 2020, then this particular event will be over, but there will be more to come in the future. And the best way to keep up to date with these events is to subscribe to the email list on fertilityrewire.com. Hello and welcome to the Fertility Rewire podcast, a place for information and discussion around topics relevant to fertility. I'm your host, Kat Stevens. I'm a fertility coach and founder of the Fertility Rewire program. And I'm passionate about people being given sufficient information to enhance their own fertility awareness. Hello and welcome to episode 39 of the Fertility Rewire podcast. I'm Kat Stevens, founder of the Fertility Rewire method, and I work as a fertility coach, if you didn't know that. I'm really excited because this week I have a Facebook group which covers wider aspects of hormonal health called It's Not You, It's Your Hormones, and I'll provide the link. And next week I'm going to be running a free event which is Reset and Balance, and specifically we're looking at hormonal health. So on the first day, I'm going to run through with you what signs your body is giving you that there may be hormonal imbalance, what imbalance that is, and we're going to start to look at some tips and techniques you can use to start to gain a sense of balance. So if that's useful for you, I will share the link in the show notes. It's actually on a different webpage. It's on catstevens.co.uk and it's the Reset and Balance, but I will share that. Right, along those lines, what I want to talk about this week is something that I think people often ask themselves when trying to get pregnant, definitely. And it's certainly something that is big in the work that I do with clients. And this is this education and information and aha moments that people get. And that is what you're doing wrong. Now, I wouldn't normally use the word wrong, but it emphasizes a point. Now, let me just run through some of the factors, let's say, factors that you may be overlooking, factors that you may have misled about, and that their information isn't potentially there. So they're not in any particular order. So I'm just going to go through. So one of the big ones is ovulation, and the timing of ovulation and the strength of your ovulation are often overlooked. In terms of when you ovulate, in the magic holy grail of the 28-day cycle, you are led to believe that you would ovulate on day 14. Often people are advised that they ovulate mid-cycle. Sometimes they're advised that they ovulate 14 days before their period. Now, unless you are monitoring this, you can't know when you are ovulating. So in terms of the importance of that is if you are waiting to try to conceive for when you ovulate, whether that be peeing on ovulation sticks or based on the timings that you've been led to believe, it's not necessarily going to work. And I'll give you an example of, when I work with couples, I greatly encourage temperature charting or using something that can track this for you, like OvuSense. Now, when we use temperature charting, there is the potential that this becomes hugely stressful for people, which is why I always ask that people do it and just send it to me and try not to analyze it. And I will always go through with, in every session, what I am seeing in it, and that bases our treatment and self-treatment. Working with couples, something really, really common is in a 28-day cycle. Actually, what we see with some couples is they're not ovulating until day 18, which gives you a 10-day luteal phase, which is unlikely to provide the right environment for a pregnancy. I've had couples that have had a 23-day ovulation when they were led to believe by the ovulation predictor kits that this was much earlier. A 23-day ovulation in a 28-day cycle is not going to result in pregnancy. But panic not, because there is stuff that we can do about that. So ovulation and when you ovulate is key, and learning to go with the body's signs of that is also really, really important. Something else that is wrong, that you are told wrong, not that you are doing wrong, is that your bleed, if it's very light, is normal, and if your bleed, if it's very heavy, is normal. And all of the literature that you tend to come across high in your searches on the internet will tell you that people's bleeds vary, and some people have short bleeds and some people have long bleeds, and some have light and some have heavy. Now, bearing in mind the heaviness and the lightness can be quite subjective, I'll be honest, because people have different views on what that is. So it's important to know that. And on the Fertility Rewire website, there is a free download available, actually, which is what your bleed tells you about your fertility. And if you haven't had a look at that, I would point you there to that. Again, I'll share that in the show notes, because that bleed tells me so much information about your fertility and really gives us the signposts of what we're going to do. What is also wrong, and I say this time and time again, and I will stand by this, is that making you wait a year is wrong. When you start to think about trying for a family, that is when you should be given all of the information necessary, and that is when you should be aware of more information, and that is when you should really be having access to some tests. Now, this can't be done on the NHS here in the UK, but it is important to know what you can have done, or really, really start to take note of what factors could be deficient and what you can do to support yourself in terms of that. That is huge. And there are some tests, some quite inexpensive tests that I would generally pinpoint you to. Vitamin D is crucial, and there are some others as well, that factors that might impact both sperm and egg. So what nutrients you need, that's really, really key. Also, that advice about ovulation, that advice about your cycle and really getting on top of that, and your pelvic health, that's hugely important. So if you've been told that your cervix is pointing the wrong way, or you might have heard words such as retroverted or anteverted, that's really, really key. Not necessarily in terms of sperm getting into the cervix, but in terms of that uterus health itself and its ability to clear every month with your cycle. What's also wrong is that the limited information that you have, which I guess follows on from that, but that you are relying after that 6 months to 12 months on very limited testing. And at that point where you think you're going to get the answers, actually, often you are told that it is unexplained. And it is at this point that you are then put into the fertility assisted system. So you have a few more tests, and even after those tests, if it's still unexplained and everything is, I'm doing inverted commas, normal, then you will go into the fertility system, which I do not believe is the correct first line for the large majority of people who end up down that path. And that's my opinion, and that's based on my knowledge, my experience, and working with the clients that I work with. It's not a sweeping statement, and it's not said lightly, but it is, there are a large number of couples who have gone down that route who, if we had investigated further, we might have found some real key factors that are affecting it. Because going to IVF doesn't ensure success, obviously. So limited testing, and this is particularly important when it comes to male factor, because when you look at the test, the sperm test, and I refer you back to a podcast episode with Barbara Scott where we looked at male factor, and in episode 38, the most recent one, where I chatted with Dr. Gadir from the Beverly Hills IVF clinic, we talk about sperm and we talk about sperm DNA fragmentation, and in both of those episodes we refer to Dr. Cheryl Homer. And in the episode with Barbara Scott, in the show notes there is a link to a YouTube clip about a character, someone in Made in Chelsea. His name is escaping. Ollie Locke, that's it. He had a test for sperm DNA fragmentation at a young age and found that actually it wasn't looking good for him, and there were things that he needed to do to change that. That's important because it is possible to change it. So other things to think about is it's not normal. I talked about bleed. It's not normal to have period cramps, painful period cramps. That's a sign that there's something that we can do to support that. Also having PMS, having that mood before your period, that is a huge indicator of hormonal imbalance. Being told that age is a huge factor, and yes, it is, and we've talked about egg quality and things like that, and that is important at certain ages. But the fact that you're being told that is actually causing you a huge amount of stress and worry even before you start trying at some point. If you think, you're getting towards 35 or over 35 and you've already started to worry that by the time you want to start a family, it's going to be too late. You're already putting that stress in place. And people over the age of 35 and in their 40s do get pregnant by mistake. There's lots of figures and evidence to support that. But when you add in the fear and the terror and the psychological factors that come into play when you start trying, that can really hinder your chances of getting pregnant. Another thing that perhaps we're doing wrong is the scheduling of sex. Now, it's hard, it's so hard, and you're working on the timings, bearing in mind from what I talked about, your timings might not be right. You're working on timings, it has to be done. The anxiety and the fear and the tension is rising, and it's not like it used to be. This isn't what you were like as a couple. It almost can become something you have to do, and that affects the physicality of it, but also the intimacy of it. If you have a lack of libido, that is an indication of something as well, and something that we can address. And it might not just be on a physical level, it might not just be that. More often than not, that is due to the high amounts of cortisol in the body having an impact on the hormonal balance. And please don't listen to this saying, oh, so it's stress that is the problem. Of course, it is a huge, huge factor, but just telling you to relax is not the way forward either. That's something else that is hugely wrong, and the advice that people have given is they just need to relax, because that's like saying you just need to win an Olympic gold, like it's just a really easy thing that you can switch on and do, and it isn't. Also, there's real mixed messages that can lead to getting things wrong in terms of nutrition and supplements. And Generally, we're told that you need to take folic acid, and that's something in itself that I argue with, because it's not folic acid you need. Purest form, it's methylated folate you need. But it's also key to understand the real importance of some key nutrients that are lacking in our diets today and are vital for fertility. So that's hugely important as well. Also, you are led to believe that there's an assumption that there's just one thing affecting your fertility if there's a diagnosis. So if you've been diagnosed with PCOS or endometriosis, then everything kind of stops at that point. We can't forget the other factors at play, because people with PCOS and endometriosis do get pregnant. So it's really, really important to consider all of the other aspects that are involved in fertility. It is not just about getting an egg and sperm together. It is so much more than that. It's so much more than you were led to believe, as I often say in that sex education class at school. Now, I was compelled to come and talk about this today and to record this. And I don't want it to sound like a rant. And it's not anti the fertility model, because, as I've said to you many times, for some couples, that is absolutely what's needed in order to achieve pregnancy, to achieve, the birth of a healthy child. But it is not appropriate for everyone. And if there was more information, if there was more support, then less people would require IVF. And if less people require IVF as a first-line treatment, that opens the door for it being offered more widely, with more funded rounds perhaps, to those who absolutely need it. And that is at the heart of absolutely everything I do. So when I work with couples, whether that be for a free chat, which sometimes can just point them in the direction of something else, where they need to look and what they need to take up and add, that's one direction. Other than that, I have a deep dive session that I work with couples on, where we can really start to unpick further aspects and I give further advice. Or they work with me for a month and then just have support for the next few months, or we work together for 3 months. So there's lots of different ways that I work with people, but at its very, very heart is identifying what signs your body is giving you that you don't necessarily know are signs that I can help couples work with to unpick, and what we can do about it. Because there is a lot more we can do about it than you are led to believe. So if you want any more information, have a look through some of the other podcast episodes, have a look at the free downloads on Fertility Rewire. And if you wanted to have a free chat just to get my view on where you're at, then do get in touch. The link is on the website, fertilityrewire.com. I'd love to hear from you. If you've got any questions or comments, as ever, just send them over. I love to hear comments from people. I love to hear questions. And I have some amazing free chats with people. And just really start to uncover what's really going on, what's at play, and if there's anything that you can do here and now to improve your fertility. As ever, take care. You've been listening to the Fertility Rewire podcast with me, Kat Stevens. If you wanted to find any further details, then you can check out the website, fertilityrewire.com, or find me on Instagram or Facebook or Pinterest at Fertility Rewire.